there are now 4 Democratic justices and 4 Republican justices, an even split in the court. Almost unheard of. Constitutional Accountability Center President Elizabeth Wydra will tell us how this is all going to play out. Elizabeth, thank you for being here. I want to start out first with, there are some huge topics that are on the docket right now for the Supreme Court. These are things that could be now thrown up in arms. I want to get your take. We've got redistricting, we've got immigration, affirmative action, labor unions, abortion. All of these are issues before the court. How do you see these cases, first and foremost, playing out in the near term?
Yeah, you know, this was already a blockbuster term even before this vacancy arose. As you noted, there are huge issues of profound importance to the nation: abortion, affirmative action, unions, immigration. And so now we have these issues coming to a court that isn't working at its full complement of 9 justices. There are only 8 justices. And so that means that cases that are closely divided could end up being 4-4 instead of what we come to see as, you know, these 5-4 ideologically divided cases. And when the court rules 4-4, that means that there's no nationwide precedent being set. It's not your usual Supreme Court case that sets the precedent for the nation. Instead, it just affirms the lower court ruling, and that means that there can be conflicting laws out there across the nation, like abortion is a great example. If the court splits 4-4 on this big abortion case coming out of Texas, we could have different rules in Texas versus Wisconsin, for example. So this is a big issue right now.
You know, and Elizabeth, you mentioned Texas. Texas Senator Ted Cruz has already said that he would filibuster any nominee. On Saturday, the day of Scalia's death, Mitch McConnell coming out and saying that it's in the best interest to block the nominee if the president decides to put one forward. And that's my next question. But, I mean, what do you think this does to the overall health of the court if this becomes a long, drawn-out political fight, which, frankly, it looks like it's going to be no matter what any of us here say?
Well, so I think it's important to remember, so those of us like me who work in the Supreme Court all the time, our calendars go from October to June pretty much. That's the length of each term. And so if you think about waiting until the next president is inaugurated for the Supreme Court justice's vacancy to be filled, that could put us all the way into possibly April 2017. That is an extraordinary, unprecedented amount of time to not have the Supreme Court with its full complement of 9 justices.
What do you think about
truly unprecedented?
But what do you think about a possible recess appointment? Do you think that the president would attempt something like that, knowing that in particular with regards to immigration and abortion, that he's got some very serious topics that do affect the nation that are that he is championing these to proceed? The
president has indicated that he's going to proceed in the normal route. You know, he said this week that he would wait until the Senate came back from its recess. So he seems to be focused on fulfilling the Constitution's Article 2 duty for him to nominate someone to the Supreme Court. And then the question is, what does the Senate do? Does the Senate follow its constitutional duty to advise and consent, or do they follow the Ted Cruz route and say, we're just going to throw up our hands and say no?
There are several names that have been thrown out, in particular, Kamala Harris, the Attorney General of California, Diane Wood, Janet Napolitano, former Homeland Secretary, Merrick Garland, he is a U.S. Court of Appeals in D.C. Of all these names, and there are more, Sri Srinivasan, again, all of these names that are being thrown out right now, and I'm giving you the highlighted names that we've had a lot of discussion about today on Fox Business. Do any of those names to you signal that those might be someone that the president would consider appointing, in particular Kamala Harris, who has been a big proponent and supporter of during his presidency?
You know, to be honest, I think there are a large number of well-credentialed people who could be put up by the president. And that's why it's important for the Senate to actually have a hearing, I think, on these particular folks, because that's when they can really test their credentials or not. But there has never been a nominee put forward that has not been given a hearing. Even when justices have been rejected, they've always been given a hearing. And so for the Senate to decide not to give a hearing and vote on whoever is put up, that would also be unprecedented.
Well, again, but all of those names that I put out, I mean, do any of those, you know, sing to you right now? Kamala Harris, Sri Srinivasan, do any of those sing to you, Elizabeth? Before I let you go, come on.
Yeah, you know, I think predictions are a dangerous business, but I think, you know, any of those folks, especially some of the judges who are on the bench right now who have been unanimously confirmed by the Senate for their current seats, you know, it'd be very hard for them to be, if they were put up by the president, you know, Judge Srinivasan was unanimously confirmed by the Senate. for the Senate, to come back and say, oh no, we thought he was unanimously qualified just a few years ago, but now we don't, it does kind of seem like politics and not fulfilling the constitutional duty to advise and consent.
The politics of the court is where we're at today. Elizabeth, thank you very much for your commentary. Appreciate it.